May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. What kind of tree would you like to be? If you were planted in one of our fields or woods, by the side of the river or in a hedge, what would you look like? We could spend a pleasant few minutes going through your options. Hearts of oak are our men. That sounds nice in English. Or how about loveliest of trees, the cherry now is hung with bloom along the bough? Or what about the ginkgo, that astonishingly beautiful living fossil, so dear to Dr. Peabody? No offence, Anthony. I'm going to leave you to ponder that in your own time, because we have ground to cover. I'm speaking about trees because it's All Saints' Day. For all the saints who from their labours rest, oh, what their joy and their glory must be. We've been pondering the meaning of the Christian life during the green season after Trinity, and now suddenly here we are in November. Time to see how it all fits together. Today's Gospel reading is the Beatitudes from the 5th chapter of St. Matthew's Gospel. Blessed are they. Beati sunt in Latin. Beatitudes. That's the theme. But Matthew's Beatitudes aren't exactly the text I'm thinking about. There are Beatitudes in the Old Testament as well, and I'm looking to the Psalter. The very first psalm, indeed, the one that gives the key to all 150 of them. Blessed is the man that hath not walked in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stood in the way of sinners. His delight is in the law of the Lord. He shall be like a tree planted by the waterside, that will bring forth his fruit in due season. The righteous shall be like a tree planted by the waterside, and will bring forth fruit. At first sight, it perhaps seems a bit unpromising. The Holy Land wasn't actually very good for trees, certainly not for any you might hope to provide timber. Oaks were up in the windy and perilous lands of the north. Cedar wood had to be imported from Lebanon. But a tree it has to be if we're going to take the psalm seriously. His leaf also shall not wither. Think of yourself as a tree, starting off in your childhood as tender years, starting off in your tender years of your childhood as a shoot sending a precarious root into the ground, fed by earth and rain, growing up towards the sun, flexible green stem putting forth fresh shoots and leaves, while at the same time questing down into the earth for moisture and minerals. That's you. After a few years, a lithe sapling, fresh and pleasant to the eye, tentatively getting ready to flower for the first time. That's you. Then after a year or two more, beginning to develop a solid trunk, branches firm enough to support the weight of birds and the fruit which will grow in plenty, and sending roots down deep into the earth. That's you. As it says in another psalm, the trees of the Lord also are full of sap, even the cedars of Lebanon which he has planted, wherein the birds make their nest, and the fir trees are a dwelling for the stork. Think back to when you were in your late teens, your early 20s. What kind of tree were you then? And what went wrong? No, don't worry. Probably nothing did. It gets better as you get older, according to another psalm. The righteous shall flourish like a palm tree. They also shall bring forth more fruit in their old age than before. They shall bring forth more fruit in their old age, and they shall be fat and well-liking. Fat and well-liking, so much to look forward to. As you can see, the Lord likes trees. And the more we're like trees, the more we are blessed. Think back to your 20s again. green, lithe, full of sap, I said. I can see that. I can remember what it felt like. Deep down, I suspect that's all still there. All things bright and beautiful, playfulness, innocence, lack of guile, unboundedness of spirit, robust health and inner light, and natural conscience, and unerring sense of light, and right imperturbability, grace, a calm eye and easy good humour, balance, freedom from malice and pettiness, the absence of fear, the presence of largesse, and a permeating sense of gratitude, and the prospect of becoming fat and well-liking in old age. What could go wrong? Well, as I said, maybe nothing did. Maybe that's all still there in you, and that's the way you spend your life, and good for you. But as we heard a few weeks ago in the parable of the sower, maybe the evil one does come along and snatch away what's sown in the heart. Trouble or persecution may arise, the cares of the world and the lure of wealth. Things may go wrong in relationships. Those we rely on may fall sick or die. This is the common lot of every person born on this earth, and we come to terms with it as best we can. For Christians, though, maybe that's not an end of it. What do you do that is more? Christ asked. In that same chapter that the Beatitudes are in, chapter 5, what do you do that is more? The common lot of every person born on this earth may not be enough. Do not even publicans and sinners do these things? Christ said, and asked, what do you do that is more than they do? We who form the holy people of God are incorporated into Christ. We look into things that angels long to see. More is given, so more is asked of us. Not only should life be as good and bright as I said, but also the thing we should be doing more is living the life of the Beatitudes. Merciful, poor in spirit, peacemaking, meek, pure in heart. How difficult is that? Well, we do seem to make heavy weather of it. I suspect that's because we generally get the Beatitudes wrong. We think of them as being a bit like the commandments. This is the ideal, this is how we're meant to live, and perhaps we need to try a bit harder if there isn't going to be the odd attack of weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth. Sounds like hard work. And what I need to do here is to persuade you that this isn't how it is. Think back to those days of playfulness, innocence, lack of guile, unboundedness of spirit, robust health, and inner light. Did you have to work at being those things? Or did they just come naturally because that's how you were? I think that's just how we were. Now, since then, of course, time has passed, cares and troubles have come, responsibilities and regrets, and there seems to be no going back. And in precisely this way, perhaps that is true. But there was a time when ease came naturally. So on this day when we celebrate the holy people of God, All Saints' Day, not just those who rest from their labours and wear the heavenly crown, but those of us who try to live a good life amongst the earthly realities here and now and aren't quite dead yet, we need to ask what we need to get back to and whether we can get back to it, whether it can be done. And here are three things I think that can be said. First, Christ's life wasn't exactly empty of cares and troubles. The foxes find rest and the bird has his nest, but Christ lived a wandering life that exposed him to the anger and resentment of the authorities and led him to a painful death. Yet even so, he managed to be meek, merciful, and peacemaking. The Beatitudes are describing the life of Christ. He set the standard for being meek and merciful. We can't blame our circumstances. We can't push the responsibility onto other people. Secondly, we heard on Whit Sunday that the Holy Spirit lives in our hearts, welling up like a spring of living water. Renewal and refreshment are built in. They're part of the package. The God who lives within us is a perpetual yes, a positive force that propels us forward and renews us with his strength. I did rather mislead you when I gave you your choice of what tree you could be. Bearing fruit in due season, that's what's expected of us. We're expected to be fruit trees, for heaven's sake. In biblical terms, that would be persimmons, pomegranates, olives, figs. Anything that will give a return. I was speaking with a friend last night, and she did indeed say that she wanted to be an oak tree. I was about to say that it's not a fruit tree, but she went on to say she's been a teacher all her life. Every child or adult she's taught has been an acorn she's been planting in the world. I can tell you, you don't argue with the redoubtable presenter of Christchurch, New Zealand, so that's that. And indeed, the fruit of a ginkgo goes to make another ginkgo, which is a kind of blessing, so let's not argue with that either. But the point remains, as I've said almost every week since Easter, God requires a return from us, and the return comes in the form of fruit we're expected to bear. And this fruit is not something we have to work hard at. Apple trees aren't expected to work hard at producing machine parts. Cox's orange pippins are quite enough. The fruit comes from just being who we are, not refusing to be who we're meant to be. And thirdly, however much God may be the God who is yes, we also need to learn to use the word no. I've been watching the new Pope on television. I can't say I'd recommend it to all of you. It's largely concerned with the erotic potential of taking the veil. Dear, I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. But in the new Pope, there's a moment when the world is confronted with a great evil. And the new Pope gathers the world's press in front of him. And to their surprise, he turns to west, south, east and north, just shouting, no. And that is the sum total of his interview on that occasion, shouting no. And the crowds begin to chant a thunderous no as he later walks amongst them in St. Peter's Square. Now this no is dramatic and it's counterintuitive, but it's important. God loved the world, that's why he sent his son, but the world still needed to be redeemed, and it still does. There is stuff out there we need to say no to. We can recover our meekness, our love of peace, our goodness, our freedom from malice and gratitude, but only by a process of healing. Healing, growing back, becoming again what we are. And part of it will involve saying a firm no to what we know will harm us and God's good world. Now we've seen in his recent parables, the ones we've been looking at recently, how Jesus' agricultural advice is not necessarily going to make you a successful farmer in the 21st century. But the principles are there. And the thing about a fruit tree is that it is pruned and tended, fed and, yes, valued. And that, according to Scripture, that is work that God undertakes himself. We don't have to do it on ourselves. I am the vine, said Jesus, and my Father is the pruner of the vines. Pruning, clearing away unproductive growth, opening up the heart of the tree, the sun and the rain, that is part of the deal. As I said, think back to when you were a sapling, green and full of life and potential, when you were developing the beginnings of a solid trunk and main branches. That's the core of you, and that is what you have to be true to. If you were an olive or fig tree, a persimmon or a vine, you would expect to be cut back to the basic fundamental you every year. Every year the farmer would come at you with a pruning hook, pare you back, give you strength and focus, bring you back to what at core you are. That's a good and benign process, one that God does for you if you only accept his care. So go with this nature of yours. Learn to say yes to the God who brought you so far and helps you to grow and thrive. Learn to say no to all the things that weaken, distract, enfeeble. All this is part of the discipline that we took on the moment we came to faith. It's part of the yoke that is easy, the burden that is light. Saying yes more continually, no more often. Realizing that by becoming again who we are, we'll bring back strength to the church, strength that the world thinks is ebbing away. If you need a guiding principle to take you through this strange season we're heading into, let this be it.